Welcome to Keeping It Together.
A series of recorded conversations about why we need to reframe the topic of self-care from being a reward to being a requirement.
Are you an entrepreneur, business owner, or leader who is struggling to prioritize yourself while keeping your company going?
We get it because we're also business owners and have had to juggle to keep it all together too.
Our goal is to share our resources and perspectives on topics related to all aspects of personal wellness to help our fellow business owners and leaders thrive as people.
Yeah, so that they can support their companies and employees to flourish too.
I'm Geneviève Lagacé-Gore from Marquis Benefits.
And I'm Jackie Faulkner from Thrive State. Welcome to our conversation. Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome back to Keeping It Together. We're on episode 4, and you can see we have a little bit of a different look because we are in a lockdown here in Ontario. We can't be at the Sandbox, our usual spot, but we didn't want to, we wanted to keep going. So today we're going to be talking about financial health as it relates to our overall wellness as business owners and leaders. So, Geneviève, let's start with you to kind of kick us off with, just talking about why financial health is so important for us to be talking about as business owners and leaders.
Absolutely. I think when we started our conversations, we really focused a lot, on the strategies to improve our wellness, right? Self-care, time management, other tools like that. And I think when we look at our overall health, we look at these pillars, right? We look at our physical health, we look at our mental health. And I think what we do is we use tools like exercise to really, promote our physical and mental health. We use meditation to reduce stress, improve our work-life balance. But what we really need to also consider is the impact of financial health.
Mm.
And I think that's the third pillar, right? We think of our overall wellness, it's really integrated. And that's why I think it's a really good idea to bring mental, physical, and financial health under that umbrella. Because I really think it's intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
Our poor mental health results in a negative physical health, and the same is in reverse. We also need to recognize that poor financial health can hugely impact our physical and our mental health.
Totally.
I think they are closely intertwined.
Yeah. Actually, when I hear you say it that way, it's very much the social determinants of health. It's, there's so much, research and evidence around, people who are experiencing poverty is closely tied to their physical and emotional well-being. And so the same I think applies to everybody, that there is that correlation between whatever your financial status is and your overall well-being. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that if one of those components is out of joint, I think it affects the others, right? I think it's a little bit of a dance, for lack of a better expression, to kind of say, how do we work all three of these pillars together? So one shouldn't have more importance over the other because they're so closely integrated.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. I think that some level of stress, short-term bursts of stress, are good for us and boosts our immune system. Some level of normal level of anxiety is good for performance. It keeps you on edge.
It motivates you, to do something.
Motivates you, gets you to complete the task that you are under pressure for. But it's a good behavior. It's a good type of stress. But what we're also talking about, though, is that some of this can be chronic stress. And a lot of that chronic stress is driven by financial worries.
Mm.
And that again has a reverse effect on your health. It can make your disease state or your chronic disease worsen, right? The symptoms of someone's chronic disease will worsen by this lengthened chronic stress due to financial worries. We know from stats, studies being done, especially now in the pandemic, that, we are experiencing, a higher percentage of people are experiencing chronic excessive stress.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the top stressors are related to financial worries.
Right. And
Right?
especially for business owners, you're carrying that financial burden of running, whether it's your own thing or you have employees, and the overheads. Like, yeah, there's tons. So much about business is about the finances. It's like the financials of the business, not just personal. So it makes sense.
Correct.
There's like an added stress for business owners and leaders about financial health, because there's more than just my income salary to worry about. There's this whole other entity that I'm managing financially.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all have to face the changes that the pandemic brought to our businesses, right? In varying degrees, of course, right? Some businesses have, increased their revenues, and that comes with different challenges. Others have completely been impacted and shut down by the pandemic. And that creates a lot of financial stress. And we take that to work. Our financial worries follow us, regardless of where you are. It's a 24/7 worry about, you're making sure that you meet your commitments. And we know that for many of us, for many Canadians, we're working paycheck to paycheck, right? We're still struggling to meet our obligations. So that really brings me to defining some terms: financial health and financial well-being. And so financial health is really defined as something that is an objective measure. And it's related to a person's financial resources and their ability to meet their ongoing financial obligations, right? So do they have sufficient revenue, income coming in to meet their obligation? If yes, then they are financially healthy.
Okay.
Right?
So that's like the paper, if they go to the bank or whatever, look at their financial statements, tell you your financial health objectively.
Correct. Okay. Objectively. Exactly, because it's a measure. Now, on the other side of that, when we talk about financial well-being, that is subjective. It involves someone's personal opinion, attitude, confidence about their financial situation and their ability. Do they have confidence that they can meet their short-term or long-term objectives? And then I think that relates to a survey by Sanofi that tells us that it kind of gives you the relationship between, if you have poor health, okay, only 26% of those in poor health believe that they have good financial health. And that's compared to 59% of those in good health think that they're doing well financially. So there is a correlation with how you are health-wise on your sort of attitude or confidence in your financial well-being. So they're closely tied.
So there's what you're describing then, the financial well-being is very much about the person's mindset, how they relate to their objective financial health. So two people on paper could have the same financial health situation, but how they feel about it could be totally different. And so their financial well-being might be different. For one person, this is not enough and I'm still stressed because I'm in that kind of mindset. And for the other person, they're like, I'm hit success. This is it. I'm killing it. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. It's
I will,
interesting, right? So it
yeah.
really is a personal journey, just like a personal journey in our self-care, just in our personal journey for, striving to have good mental health.
Mm-hmm.
It is subjective and it needs to be very much personal. And I think so when we start thinking about approaches, and knowing that there's two sides to this, there's the worry about your financial situation, especially driven by the pandemic. But there's also the worry of if you have a health crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and are you prepared financially
Right.
for a health crisis? I think the pandemic really brought forth the unpredictability of our health, right? How someone, could have COVID-19 and be completely fine, whereas someone else could be, hospitalized and have to be on the ventilators. And really, it's the unknown, right? I think that
Mm-hmm.
added a little bit more of a stress. So are you protected financially for a health crisis, a personal health crisis? So we know that more than half of Canadians who have had a health crisis were severely impacted financially.
Right. Which I
So
would guess is even, I don't know if you have the numbers on how many of those people are business owners or leaders, but realistically,
yeah.
like when I think about my business and probably yours, my partner who owns a business, like
Mhm.
if I go down, if I have to pause because of a medical crisis, that does directly impact more than just myself financially. So there it is an added stress.
Right.
And I mean, I
It,
think you're right that the pandemic has sort of amplified um, the issue. But I certainly for myself, and I know we've talked about this, like in my family alone in 2021, like both my dad and I were business partners, and we've both had medical crises already. It's only April. Um,
I
and that
know,
absolutely, and so it does have that ripple effect of
of course.
the short-term financial impact, having to put projects on pause or
Right.
whatever. It's yeah, it can be very disruptive.
Because it could financially hurt you short term, right? Depleting savings.
Hmm.
It could potentially delay retirement
Right.
or, retirement plans and
Hmm.
what you want to do, depending on how far you are from retirement,
Hmm.
and, create a financial issue with increasing your debts, right?
Right, right. So, given all of that, like obviously we agree financial health is, seriously important for us as business owners or leaders to really pay attention to. What is stopping us? Why isn't
Yeah.
that happening?
And some of the things I think that pops in right away is we're busy. We're, it's difficult to fit in
Mhm.
these important, just like is with self-care. It's hard to plan. We get very busy with our work,
Mm.
our clients, and we try to avoid it. We're healthy, we're fine.
Mhm.
We don't need to worry about protecting. We'll get there. It's on the list, right?
Yeah.
Um, we start looking at, also our past experience. Oh, things have gone well in the past. I'm fine. There's all these different personal reasons,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes it's gender related, right? We start talking about, women in business. What are the things that are obstacles for us, right? You can talk about pay equity, you can
Mhm.
talk about confidence gap, right? The not having the confidence or the knowledge to feel comfortable about finances and how to fix that and where to start,
Mhm.
right? And the pandemic has impacted women a lot more than other groups.
Mhm.
And so when you're just trying to survive, you have to, step back and understand, okay, what am I going to do? And I think the quick thing or the three things I would recommend to improve your financial wellness right off the bat is to start with a plan,
Mm,
right? It's practical ways. It's knowing based on what your financial obligations are. What are the things you need to do day to day,
mhm,
short term, long term? Same as we approach our physical wellness, same as we approach our mental wellness. What are the small steps I could do today to help me worry less about my finances,
mhm,
right? So having a plan, talking to your team, we know that that will help reduce the worry about money.
mhm,
And teaming up. The second thing is teaming up with the right people.
mm,
Having a team, talk to the experts, get yourself comfortable with what you can do to put yourself in a better financial position so that day to day it is not always top of mind.
mhm.
And then thirdly, learn as much as you can,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I was just thinking,
Financial literacy.
right. I was thinking about that, like going back to the question about what stops business owners from paying attention to their financial health in, to the extent that they need to in order to decrease the stress and to take on these things that you've talked about. And I think, at least in my experience and what I've observed, is that people tend to start businesses that are, kind of passion driven. They're really into the thing that they do. They're not money experts. They're
Right?
not financial management experts.
That's right.
But at some point things, hit a point in business where it gets beyond your capacity to like, whatever it is, understand a P&L or a balance sheet or
Mhm.
forecasting, all the things that come with running a business financially. That is not the average person's skill
That's
set, and
right.
it's not what they envisioned how they would even spend their time related to business. So I totally agree with you. There's, I think giving yourself permission to not be the expert. Don't even try to figure it out. Get connected with, bookkeeper, financial planner, whatever it
That's right.
is. Just recognizing and being able to say, I don't know. I'm going to find someone I trust who does, so that I just don't have to worry about it. Just tell me what to do.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. I think we take on so much, right? And we do that with so
Mm,
many aspects of our life. And I think that if you, slow down and break it down into more bite-sized things that you can do, I think overall you start that journey again to making sure that you're managing some of that stress that's
mm-hmm.
coming from the financial side,
Hmm.
right? And then it just translates into something that just runs a lot smoother. You don't have to take it on all by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then from a risk perspective, use tools, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Use the tools to mitigate that risk, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are you willing? What is keeping you up at night? Can you mitigate that by
Mm-hmm.
insuring it, for example,
Right.
right? So those are the things that you can put in place
Hmm.
that will allow you to stop worrying
Mm-hmm.
so much, or the worry level can come down a bit because you've put things in place to
Mm-hmm.
mitigate it, right?
Mm-hmm.
To reduce it.
Yeah. So what's been your kind of personal experience then, with all things financial?
I was, you and I were talking about that, and it made me really think back of, how we're brought up,
Mm-hmm.
how we're brought up will impact, I think,
The money story.
your money story, and it really impacts sometimes if you're risk averse,
Mm-hmm.
and or if you are way more adventurous and
Hmm.
are more able to handle risk. I think back of when I was a teenager,
Hmm.
when I was a young adult, and there was a bit of scarcity there. Like we were, not doing well as a family, and it was tight and then difficult, and we had obligations, and it felt very uneasy
Mm.
growing up a little bit with that. And it made me a little bit more risk averse than if I might not have lived through that, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And I think of my journey when I think of, going to university and then getting my first job and having a lot of need for security when it
Mm.
came to my income, right? And I think that caused my sort of my jump into entrepreneur and being a business leader or owner
Yeah.
at a much slower pace than others, right? I think that that impacted
Mm.
how quickly I took the leap.
Right.
And right, because there was always in the back of my mind a sense of I need the security of a salary. I need this and I need
Right.
that.
The biweekly
Sure.
paycheck. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And
Mm.
I think that does impact. And it was a journey also for financial literacy. I
Mm.
think it's an ongoing
Yeah.
journey. I think,
I'm with you.
learning to understand how to be able to meet financial obligations and paying off debts and, you know, learning how to handle credit card debt and making sure
Mhm.
as a young person to not get in trouble with that. Those are all things you have to learn.
Mhm.
Um, and I think um, I find that now I have a much better comfort level because I've gone through that learn as much as you can phase in the last 10 years of just how to better manage and how to better plan a budget. And
Mhm.
it's simple, right? You've got your day to day obligations, day to day tasks that you do to stay financially
Mhm. Mhm.
healthy. And then you have your short term and long term goals, and then tie that into the business as well,
Hmm.
right? It's a moving piece. And it was an interesting journey to get to where we are today. And I wouldn't change it though. I think it's important. I think our past really is an important lesson.
Mhm.
How about you?
Mhm. Yeah, it's so funny because even in, when we talked about the fact that we have to talk about finances as part of our overall wellness, I had the realization that for me, talking about finances feels more vulnerable than talking about mental health,
I think
which
so too.
which is a reflection of probably, related to my upbringing, like you said. And I'm very aware of how much privilege I actually come from, in many ways, including, the socioeconomic privilege that I carry. And also within the sort of culture that I grew up in, there was a bit of taboo around uh, um, having too much money. And
Yeah.
so it's almost like because of that, the message I internalized was that it's not okay to have a lot or want a lot or work for more. So it's like I came to have a bit of a scarcity mindset out of a fear that having too much is bad.
Hmm.
And my mindset shift also, like I can totally relate to what you're saying about making the leap um, to entrepreneur, starting my own thing, giving up the security of a biweekly paycheck. And actually, in full disclosure, I gave up more money. So in terms of my financial health, my business is still pretty new, so I'm not making as much from a financial health perspective, but my financial well-being has gone through the roof because I actually feel richer in the full sense of my life because I've realigned, how I spend my time and choosing my stresses and certain things
Yeah.
that it just feels so my financial well-being, I guess, in some ways is more important to me than like I'm still make enough to pay the bills and it's
Yeah.
not a stress per se, but I don't have the security of the biweekly paycheck. I have to, whatever it is, find the next client, the next contract, the next thing. And
The
yet
good burst of
there,
stress, right?
right, it's the kind of stress you talked about at the beginning that's like
Yeah.
motivating, and because it's coming from doing things that I love to do. I'm choosing that stress. I could just go get another job, and go back to that. And yet that doesn't appeal to me because my financial well-being that you described, I feel like I found a really optimal place for myself in having my own business. So yeah, for me, I'm not sure the exact dollar amount, but I think there's a threshold of financial health that once I reach that it's actually not as much as I even probably thought it needed to be in order for my financial well-being to be great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Um,
you start looking at your overall wellness,
right,
financial wellness,
right.
and it's met on both sides.
Yeah.
It's met with your financial obligations are met, and your attitude and confidence has increased
Hmm.
because of those decisions. And I
Oh,
think that is part of the conversation about, working for yourself or working for others. What is that trigger? What's going to make that difference? That's going to help you in all three pillars, right? See how they're all related,
yeah. Yeah, I've
on your
definitely
mental, your
experienced.
physical, and
Yeah.
your financials all related.
Hmm.
It makes you happier,
Right.
at the end of the day.
Yeah. I don't know if
Um,
this is fully related, but I'm just going to say it because it popped into my mind. I think one of the things I've observed while having my own business is that sometimes I have said yes to certain projects or things that I can do. I'm not going to take something on I can't do. Um, uh, and they're not my favorite thing to do. They're not like the core of my business, but I'm taking them on because I've reverted back to a scarcity mindset. I'm scared about not having enough money. So I take on these things that don't really fill my bucket.
mhm.
Uh, and I've had to navigate that balance between, there is legitimate financial health concerns to keep in
Yeah,
mind and take on projects. And yet it's so easy to get bogged down all of a sudden in having taken on too many projects um, that aren't in my wheelhouse.
in your
Uh,
core,
or
right?
my
Your
core,
core
the core of our
operating.
business,
Yeah,
kind of dilute my effort overall.
yeah.
So, and that actually comes at a different cost. Whereas, I think I need to personally get better at saying no and just, spending that time and energy that would be drained by doing those kind of projects, spend that time and energy finding clients in the core of my business.
That's
Um,
right.
uh, yeah, I don't know. I think the mindset piece for me is so huge related to money.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Absolutely. And
So,
and reframing, right?
yeah.
Reframing some of the negative from our past as
Right.
well, and some of the things that affected how we look at our finances, or
Mm-hmm.
so that it can help us succeed in our businesses, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and that could lead us to, I think, what we want to recommend or resources
Yeah. I was
for
just
our,
going to ask
yeah.
what resources you recommend.
And I think there's a couple of ways to looking at it. I think from trying to alleviate some of the worries during a health crisis.
Mm.
And how do we do that? We talked about it a little bit already. How do we mitigate that? We
Mm-hmm.
can use insurance to do that. And,
Mm.
there's, the expression of protecting your biggest asset. Well, your biggest asset is you, right?
Right.
It's what you make, it's what you have, what you bring to your businesses. That's what we need to protect first, right? So that if something should occur from a health perspective,
Mm-hmm.
something that's not foreseen, right?
Yeah.
We know the stats, for example, on cancer. It's
Yeah,
not
I was
something we
just
can,
gonna say I'm a prime
right? Like,
example. I'm like I'm a generally healthy person.
yeah,
Overall, I'm doing all these things that we've been talking about doing, and then last month being told that I have cancer, uh, like totally shocking, totally unexpected. And when
absolutely.
um, not when I even look at my family or people around me, I'm the last person I thought would have happened to.
Absolutely. And
Mhm.
it's so important to realize at what we're willing to, if it is probable, what do we want to do to protect that
Mhm.
in case it occurs, right?
Mhm.
Because we're not 100% protected
Mhm.
from that. So protecting our asset ourselves comes in different ways, right? We can
Mhm.
choose to participate in getting some life insurance, personal health or group health insurance to protect for against catastrophic
Mhm.
health costs, right? That come with a health crisis, right? What are the things that are not going to be covered?
Mm.
Should I get treatment or should I be off of work? So looking at disability insurance as a
Mhm.
way to protect your income, regardless of how you get that income
Mhm.
as a business owner, if it's salary, if it's dividends, or
Mhm.
however that structure is, finding the coverage to protect that income
Mhm.
if you cannot work due to a crisis,
Mhm.
or tapping into critical illness insurance,
Mm.
having that lump sum payment to help you manage with unexpected costs.
Mhm.
I think that's one side of it, right? That's the things that you can do today to protect yourself against the financial impact of a health crisis.
Mhm.
On the other side of that, when we think of our financial worries and we think of our financial well-being, we've touched on this a bit. Get a financial checkup.
Mm.
Find your team, right? Find
Mhm.
your teams that's really going to help you manage your financial obligations,
Mhm.
help you with budgeting, help you with short-term and long-term goals. Should that be personal and then business?
Mhm.
Because having that as a well-oiled machine really then minimizes or reduces your financial worries, pardon me.
Mhm.
And, you know, with technology, I'm always encouraging people to use online tools,
Mhm.
calculators. How am I doing? Right? What can I do?
Mhm.
That's more on the personal side. I wouldn't
Mhm.
expect our business leaders to put their business through the online tools and calculators. I don't
Sure.
think that's more complicated. But knowing that you have these tools and
Mhm.
even communicating that to our families, our friends, our children, about
Mhm.
getting them educated at a younger age
Mm.
about financial stability and what that looks like and how to understand money. And those are all things we can do that will reduce
Mhm.
our financial stress.
Mhm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I think too, just in my experience, even in the conversations that we've had together about this, um, I don't think I'm alone in the having that sort of reaction to finances being taboo to talk about. And
Hmm.
yet, just like mental health or whatever else it is,
Hmm.
not that you're just going to talk to anybody about it, but the um, being able to talk about it, being able to say, I'm stressed about this with whoever is in the team that you're talking about,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
closest people. I think it's so important for as business owners to be connected to other business owners who've gone through, they've got, had to jump other hurdles if they're further along in their business or whatever the case may be, to help normalize the experience of it instead of just suffering alone, like, or somehow interpreting, my financial health is, I'm not sure, or I'm struggling, being scared to talk about or ask for help, for fear of looking like a failure or whatever it is. It is, yeah, the relief that can come from just talking to someone else who's saying,
Having
yeah,
the peer support,
peer
right?
support,
Having the peer
right?
support of someone, who has the experience, has
Hmm.
had the growth, for
Yeah,
example, in their business,
yeah,
almost looking at mentors, right? I
totally.
mean, even in my partnerships and the people I work with have had so much experience
Mm,
running a
you're
business
right.
that I feel like, because I'm in my early stage as well, that I can learn from them like they're mentors, and I
Right.
can bring forth some of my concerns or worries and know that they can help me with getting on the right path and
Hmm.
support my decision. Sometimes it's reinforcing that you're doing the right thing,
Right. Yes.
right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that will impact your financial
Well-being.
well-being, to have
Yep.
that validation that you're
Mm-hmm.
doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I met a woman just over a year ago who's, similar business to mine, and further along in her business in terms of how long she's been doing what she's doing. And she was so generous with me and has continued to be in terms of sharing grant opportunities, funding opportunities for women-led or owned organizations.
Yeah.
uh, and I just have so much appreciation and respect for her not holding that just to herself. She doesn't
Yeah.
need to do that, but wow, like, and so I've then tried to pay that forward to other, as it comes up, because I appreciate how much that's helped to me, and I want to help the next person coming along with the same. And it
Yeah.
only came about because we were talking, having a conversation, about how do you do this, or how did you overcome that, which does take a certain amount of vulnerability.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of all this, right? And knowing when you can get the support from
Mm-hmm.
someone outside, someone who's been through it.
Mm-hmm.
I think all impacts us when it comes to our wellness.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Should that be physical, now financial and mental,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
I'm really glad that we talked about this
Yeah,
today,
me too.
and hopefully
Mm-hmm.
that's really good resources for our listeners. And what do we have next on the docket?
Yes. So next time we're actually going to be talking about company culture,
Ooh.
and because it is, it's in a lot of ways it is an output. It's a result
Mhm.
of the owner slash leader's overall well-being, and yet it is also a cycle where the health of the plant affects the roots. What
Yeah,
how that is doing affects what the roots need in order to keep things going. Yeah, so we're going to be talking about company culture, which is like one of
very
my favorite
exciting.
things. I'm very excited.
Awesome. I
Yes.
can't wait. I think it's going to be really great too.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, I think we'll leave it there for now, and we'll
Thank you for
talk.
Joining us,
Yes,
everyone.
thank you for joining us.
Until next time.